What is up, humans of the internet? Thanks for choosing to be here and watch this video. I got a special guest. You are here with Learning with Bell Vista Studios, and it is our opportunity to be curious about people that are tickling our brains and making us think differently. And my guest today is one of those humans. So thank you for being here, Edoardo.
Thank you for inviting me, Kim. That's a lovely intro.
Well, I just want to get into it, but I attended a workshop you did on kind of creativity, humor, bringing that into the L&D space. And you mentioned a few things like improv and comedy, and I'm like, let's go there so I can look at transferable skills and think differently. And that's what it's all about. So I know you do a lot of stuff in leadership, communication, emotional intelligence. They're your babies. I know you got real human babies as well, but they're your work humans. My first question is,
which one do you love more, the human babies or the professional babies?
If you could go back in time and stop all of this madness. Nah.
Go for it.
Okay, first question. You know how like with stories, they're like every story has a beginning, middle, and end, and that makes it a good story. Are there good characteristics for a joke?
How much time do you have? No, first of all, jokes are more the area of stand-up comedians, or improv is a different beast. And I did used to do a lot more improv back, I don't know, 5 years ago or so. I still remember a lot of it and still remember a lot of work. But stories are, however, a very good material to go with when it comes to connecting with people, connecting with audience. So I think for that, when it comes to just a pure joke, what makes a good joke? There is a bunch of stuff. What I use is making an unusual connection between two previously unrelated concepts. That's the academic version of it. I'll get into stories as well later. Yep. But so the example I made is, I think during the workshop, what is orange and sounds like a parrot? To which the answer quite obviously is a carrot. And it's not a fantastically funny joke. Thank you for laughing. You're being polite. But when it comes to, you were talking about creativity before, when it comes to our brain, or the inner workings of it, what happens in our brain when we hear the joke is that some parts get activated that are very similar to the parts that get activated once you get a good idea, once you have your aha moment, which, summarizing decades of research in neuroscience, it means that your brain perceives humor and ideation in a very similar way, meaning that if you're funny, you're creative, and if you're creative, you're also funny. So that's, I think, a major aspect of this. So if you want to bring this into practice, well, if you're trying to design something, create something, even if you're an accountant, so not the design-related job, full respect for accountants, honestly, but you need to solve a specific problem where numbers don't fit or whatever you do, well, you're working creatively. So finding a funny solution, finding humor in that, whatever that means to you, associating different elements and laughing about it as well, that is part of the job. So then there is the whole storytelling aspect, but I think I've rambled enough for now.
Okay, we will pause on that then. I feel like I should have said to people as well, cover your ears if you don't want to know good stuff about jokes and stuff, because now anytime they watch a comedy special or like a show, they're going to be like, I know what they're doing. I know how this is going to end. Anyway, the spoiler alert came after the spoiler, so that's a shame for people.
I think you're paying too many compliments to me. I'm not a comedian. I cannot. This is the basis. This is like dad joke puns, which I'm the king of. But if you watch a stand-up comedian that has a special, the elaboration behind it is much, much better than just that. Otherwise, I could do it. But if I try that right now, chances are I'd bomb badly.
I'd laugh because I probably feel awkward for you. All right. I do want to get into improv in a minute, or later down the chat, but I want to stick specifically to jokes And you might not know all the answers, so that's okay as well. I'm just being curious right now. But
Sure.
if you were to think about coming up with a joke, or where does the spark of inspiration from jokes come from?
Do you mean what makes the joke funny, or where you
No,
get an
like,
idea from a joke?
yeah, get the idea. We'll go to the what makes it funny later, but like, yeah, where do you get the idea? Like before, when you're like, is this something that might be possible that I'd like to explore?
Well, I'm just going to curtail myself to the application in at work, because otherwise, first of all, we're exploring the world of comedy, and I may not be the perfect guest for that. But when it comes to humor and jokes applied to work, and also connected to what I was saying before, it comes from, do you want to call it curiosity? It comes from messing around and being relaxed about it. It comes from knowing that there is a big possibility that whatever you're going to say or do may not be funny, or may be funny but wouldn't work in real life.
Yeah.
So I guess a good approach to this would be knowing that it's a lot of trial and error. And if you're using humor and using jokes and using that kind of work to get to an idea, well, you need to let yourself free to explore, free to come up with really, really, really bad and weird and unfunny stuff that you know you won't use. But the point is that once it's out there, you get rid of it. And once you get rid of it, you don't need to think about it anymore, and you're free to think about what else can we have. Where does this lead me to? This joke wasn't funny. This idea wasn't funny. This unusual connection wasn't funny and didn't work. And it didn't work. But maybe if I get rid of this, I get something better. Or if I keep this and make another association with another element, hey, all of a sudden it becomes amazing.
Yeah.
So I remember give some examples for this that can also be connected to your question. Like I made the example of something that looks just very, very dumb and stupid, which was you run a Michelin star restaurant and you need to serve dessert, which is a piece of cake. Your sous chef takes the cake, last slice, splatters it on the dish. So you've got a crumbled, horrible piece of cake instead of a dessert. And you can decide to not do anything with it, or you can decide to take a risk to come up with something funny that you know may not work and could backfire, and decide that you're going to serve it anyways and make it your signature dessert. That's exactly what Massimo Bottura did. He owns a restaurant, which is a 3 Michelin star restaurant, which was voted best in the world. So, and that's how he came up with his signature dessert. So where does a good idea like this come from? What kind of joke do you need to do? There is no rule. There is a lot of trial and error and associating all the different elements you have at your disposal to, at some point, maybe see something that, this is interesting. This makes sense. Let's do it. Let's try it out and see if it works.
Yeah, that's cool. It makes me, I wanted to go there because I want to kind of think differently around how we design training courses and how we go from that analysis phase and what is going to go into the end solution or that learning event or events that we create. And what I love about that is it is an idea that you're putting out there and exploring and testing with different people and changing and adapting and not being tied to it. And it reminds me, another way of like saying the same thing that you've said is, I think it was Joe Rogan I was listening to talking about his process for writing jokes. And he said he'll get an idea, whatever it is, see something at a party, I don't know, eating dinner at a restaurant, anything, some sort of stimulus happens. And then he goes, that could be something. Let me just write, first of all. So he just writes down ideas and he has notebooks or whatever and explores things. And then when there's a time and place for that thing to be brought out, which I think of like when you gather inspiration for anything and you're like, that's a good article, that's a good TED talk, it might come up, you always hold on to those for whatever they might serve in the future. when he's ready to explore it, because it's the right time to see, is this the thing that's going to bring life to this training solution or whatever, he communicates it. He gives it a go at parties, like with close immediate people, where it's just at a house party or something. And then he'll watch people's reactions. Were they offended? Was it good? Did they laugh? Did it need to? How did he feel when he was saying it? And he's basically tweaking it each time. And then what he does is he goes on a road trip to little, I don't know what you call them, little comedy places, and tests them out on stage, again, looking for the feedback that, so he can then iterate to then take it on to a bigger stage. I don't know what big stages are called. We'll just say something, Edinburgh fucking comedy festival or something. And then eventually it ends up in something like a Netflix special. And I think it's really important as L&D practitioners to realize that process that goes into something that is effective. And that's why I wanted to go that way with the conversation. So, yeah.
Sure. I mean, echoes a lot of, first of all, it's interesting because it echoes a presentation that I saw Jimmy Chamberlain give here in Berlin. For the ones who don't know it, he is the drummer of Smashing Pumpkins, so historical band. And he was talking about UX, actually user testing. And because he went into that a bit more in his later career, though he's still playing. And he was asked on stage, like, so you're a musician, what the hell do you know about user testing, user research? What are you talking about? He's like, well, I know everything about it. We'd go on stage, try a new song, see if it worked. If the crowd reacted, would keep it. If it didn't, would tweak it around again. And he's basically doing the same process, the same thing that you were just describing. Yeah. And I think this is going beyond humor. I mean, humor is a big part of it. I think what you can get from there is connecting humor and research in the sense is more the idea of, is this funny? Do people react? What kind of a reaction am I getting from an audience? This perspective, this curiosity. So I have my own workshops, of course, and I develop them across, well, I guess the core is a few years old, but every time I develop something else, I try something else, maybe I tweak something, or maybe within an established thing, I decide I'm going to try this exercise I've never done before as well. So I will test it, and everything is a testing ground. And even the jokes that I make, that I try to make it entertaining and funny for people, because that's how you also get them to pay attention and care and give a damn about what you're doing. You want to see what works and what doesn't. And this idea of using humor in the sense of being curious, looking at what elements you have at your disposal, connecting things and exploring, keeping on the silliness, this foolishness in a way, does help you a lot, and helps you come up with ideas, but also helps you test them out and see if they work. Yeah.
What are some ways you've tested with your own courses? Where would you be testing, and how do you put it out there for testing?
Well, one thing that I would do if I want to test something new, I would say I would take a workshop that I know works as a whole. So I know that it has a beginning and an end, it's been tested before, and it's stable. And then I would add an element, something new that I haven't tried before, in a place that I think would fit, in a way that I think would fit. So, and then I would place it there. I know that if that bombs completely, it might be a weird moment, but it's not going to destroy the whole structure of the workshop. So it's going to be a test. And then in the end of the workshop, I will ask for general feedback. So I remember some exercises, or one exercise that I did. I tried it once, and everyone in the group wrote down, all good, but this one, the way you did it, made me feel uneasy. Okay, great, lesson learned. Test your assumption. Your assumption is wrong. Change what it is. And the times after I've changed it, it was received much better. So yeah, it's very, very, very much hands down. And who is in front of me? What can I do? How far can I go? And what can I say, basically?
Yeah, that's cool. And I feel like in that situation, you're really being vulnerable and exposing yourself to whatever might come up. It is coming from a place of good intention. And I guess the transferable skills there for others is to think about is areas such as facilitation, one-on-one conversations, team meetings. And there you're describing, I'm adapting. I have a good intention, I'm putting it out there and I'm going to change. And I think like something like facilitation and that is like hardcore, like you got to adapt in the moment. You don't know what's going to come up. And I think there's a lot you could probably learn or share from your improv background in like
Definitely.
just debunking that shite that goes through your head on how do I deal with these stuff that might come up.
Definitely. And I mean, first of all, I would say, if you're in this line of work, if you're into training, facilitating, working with others, you have to take massive risks and you need to be okay with that. You cannot be a presenter on stage that just follows a script and reads from the slides. That is not okay. Each training it's not a presentation, it's a conversation. Even though you're the only one using verbal cues, the crowd in front of you, or around me, I prefer to work in a circle, is going to give you visual cues. So if you're speaking and everyone is on their phone, it's your responsibility and part of your job to read it and change what you're doing. Yeah. Because otherwise it means that you're not listening to who is in front of you and you're not listening to the crowd. That's how it works. And when it comes to improv, in a way, one of the things you do learn is also to listen to the audience. If you hear that something, that a specific direction you're taking is funny, well, that's something worth exploring. That's something worth getting into a bit more, but you got to listen to what's happening off stage. And if instead you see that nobody cares about what you're talking about and you've got something that nobody can relate to on stage going on, well, you've got to change something else. And of course, it's not just stuff that happens on stage. In terms of where you go with the story, what you do, you've got to make it relatable to people. So, I mean, why are there so many movies around about couple problems, breakups, and getting back together? Why are there so many romantic comedies in a way? Because we can all relate one way or another to it. To them. So that kind of story is something that we've all felt in one way or another, so we can connect. And bringing it back to facilitation then, or workshops, well, you've got to know your audience, you've got to connect more to them, and you've got to adapt to what they're talking about. So if you've got a bunch of designers working on creativity, you've got probably some people with a certain type of mindset, with a certain set of skills that want to work in a specific way. Whereas if you're working with a bunch of engineers, that's another mindset and another way of working. And you have to start adapting. You cannot go one size fits all. That is wrong. And even though you make a decision beforehand, you've got to be willing to change it and you need to be flexible. So yeah, unless you're willing to do that, I don't think this is, I don't think you might be reaching your full potential. Let's put it this way.
That's a nice way. Well, I guess in those situations, especially with improv, like it's thinking on your feet. Like you've got to listen to someone else, think of your response and respond, and then you're saying there's a third thing of listen to the audience. That's a lot, and I feel like that's very stressful. But I do believe it's like a skill you can learn over time. Like you're probably disastrous at it when you start, but if there's so many, like I'd say this is a thing for a lot of people, is putting themselves out there to think on their feet in those stressful situations. Any tips that you'd say, just try this the next time? Listen,
everything you said is true, but if you want to break down what's the thing you need to do the most is listen. It's not about thinking on your feet. It's not about winging it. It's not having a catchy reply. Is listen to what the other person is saying. Because if there is one thing that all that work trains you on is to communicate and communication has to start with be aware of what's happening around you. What reality are you building? What inputs can you get from reality?
Yeah.
What clues is the other person giving you? What can you bite on and develop something on? And uh, when I started doing this, I don't come from training and facilitation. I come from consulting, actually, specifically consulting on renewable energy policies. So extremely different, extremely dull in a way. Though I was amazing about it, I didn't like it anymore. But one of the things that I noticed that even after a year of just doing improv, which was just a hobby back then, gave me was the fact that I noticed I could communicate, negotiate, persuade, present, solve conflicts, ideate so much better than people that were supposed to be so much better than me on paper. So people with 30 years more experience. And I was like, well, hold on a second. There is something wrong here. Why am I managing to do this? And why are they not? And that sent me kind of down the rabbit hole. Started with improv, and then in across years, I still kept the core, and I gradually went into leadership, neuroscience, research, communication, and more nerdy stuff than I'd like to admit.
What are the key things then from that communication that you had that were putting you in that position?
What do you mean communication that I had?
Well, the ways that you were learning from improv and you were communicating better, you were able to influence better, articulate ideas, it sounds like, better than those people that had been in it for 30 years.
Well, first of all, it was just getting used to it, getting used to, honestly, if you need to go on stage in a basement on a Thursday night at 11 in front of 3 bored people, and that's your show, once you manage to go past that fear, a room full of CEOs is nothing. No, like it's literally just, it's not even, doesn't even compare in terms of pressure. And what so I guess one part was just going through the training and everything. And the other part was realizing how wrong a bunch of stuff that I was told is. So take, for example, presentations. So speaking on stage. I went through business school, I went through consulting and training, and the work, all the trainings that I've been given were about make sure your body language is good, make sure it's on point, make sure you know the slides. Sure, don't turn your back to the audience, but make sure that you have a good flow, that you can repeat, that you feel confident, that you can relate to the slides, make sure you have a good space present, and everything that I've said and that have been said is only related to you, to the person on stage. It's about make sure that you look good, make sure that your body language is good, make sure that your slides are good. And nobody ever told me, is the audience listening? Are they giving a shit, or are they all on their phones or falling asleep?
Yeah.
That should be the first thing. Otherwise we're just wasting everybody's time. What's the point? So I guess this idea of looking at the other person, observing, listening, like not only just being aware at large of what is happening around you, instead of being in your head and thinking about how perfect your language needs to be. Well, that's a major difference. So I would encourage, if you don't want to go through this type of training because it's not your thing and it shouldn't be necessarily yours, just next time you give a presentation, look at the audience. Are they listening to you? If so, good. If not, how can you make them listen? And there is no answer. Just try different things.
Yeah. I like it. In terms of listening, sometimes I think if you're trying to be a good listener, don't freaking be coming up with your solution in the head as the person's still telling you their thing. Have you got any specific tips on how to create space when you've listened, to create space to then respond? Like one thing I do, I know when I'm facilitating workshops and there's like 50 billion things coming at me, is I'll say to the people, just give me a moment. I'm just processing what you've all just said. Do you have any other tips that you think are useful in that space?
No, actually, that's similar to what I do. I acknowledge,
Yeah.
for example, like someone says something, they got 3 hands up. I will point to people saying that I've acknowledged them and
I
take it
like
in,
that.
or say, okay, thank you for this. I'll keep it at the back of my head. Let me get some more input, and then indeed just put it out in the open. Like, give me a second to think and to reflect about it. And I know this can be uncomfortable for a bunch of people, because it makes the general feeling is that it makes them look like they don't know the answer, and because they feel like they're looking like they don't know the answer, they get stressed, and because they get stressed, they start to shiver or try to say something, and they don't come up with a good idea. But chill, nobody's going to notice if you take 20 seconds to think about things. Nobody cares. If anything, they would appreciate, if you do it properly, that, hey, this person is actually listening to me, and it's taken his or she's taken the time to reflect on it. So yeah, I would say be honest with the idea that you need to think about it for a second, and that is fine.
Yeah, that's cool. With I feel like you sound like you're into design thinking and stuff. And the improv, to me, it creates the space for divergent thinking. We're really big on human-centered design. And what divergent thinking is basically all ideas out there, anything is possible, blue sky. Really, yeah, you can't rule anything out for people that want to know. The opposite then is convergent, where you try to like rein in ideas and start selecting ones that you might want to take further. I feel like improv, and there was one thing I've learned from improv, my minor little exposure to it, was an activity called yes and that has like, when I'm facilitating workshops and we're trying to do a conversation or an activity, to stop people being like, oh, we've tried it before and it didn't work, or any of that kind of stuff that gets thrown up, like a negative response to, we're here to build a solution. What other activities do you have that people can experiment with?
I will go a step deeper or a step earlier than yes and. I think that yes and has like, this is me putting on the improv nerd hat for a second. Yes and is somehow misleading. It's a misleading way of working because you think that you need to say the words yes and, which it just gets into a bit of a complex nerdy talk. But what I like to do beforehand, and especially when you talked about divergent and convergent thinking, is going one step behind. So even before yes and, as in accepting and adding to something, I actually think that yes and is connected to is a good representation of yes, divergent and convergent thinking, because you accept what's being said and you connect it to something else. And this is what I usually like to do. I like to separate like in two different times and spaces, divergent and convergent thinking. And that's a necessity. One of the best pieces of research I've ever read is called Aha and Haha, which is the PhD thesis by Dr. Barry Kudrowitz of the MIT that looked at ideation and humor, came up with this discovery, which is the fact that there is a connection between the quantity of ideas you generate, elements that you generate, and their creative quality. So this is why in the beginning of any brainstorming session, people just say like, hey, don't judge each other's ideas, come up with whatever you want, don't feel judged. And that's like, everybody feels judged if you say that. Everybody does, especially if the boss is in the room. So there are different ways of putting it. The thing is that you need to list at least 15 ideas before coming up with creative stuff. And the goal here is go for quantity. Don't think in terms of quality. Think of as many ideas as you can, generate as many elements as you can, make it clear that dumb stuff needs to be said, because maybe right now it won't be said, it won't do anything, but later on, hey, we can connect it to something else. That's technically called the novel tale, according to Kudrowitz. So the first 15 ideas, is just basic stuff that anyone can come up with, and then you bring it on afterwards, like the real different stuff. And on top of that, there is I don't remember the reference right now, but it's a meta-analysis on brainstorming that was done in '89 that looked at a number like 3,000 people brainstorming in different groups, what made it work and what didn't. So nothing, so the structure of the session didn't matter, had no influence on the generation of ideas. The presence of people talking or not talking had no influence on the generation of ideas. The only thing that could make or break a brainstorming session or anything related to it is whether there are social pressures within the group. So if I have a crush on a colleague and that colleague doesn't like the other one, and the other one wants to raise from the boss and doesn't want to look stupid, all of that creates that kind of social pressure, which in turn makes you feel embarrassed, makes you feel that like you kind of look stupid, you kind of look silly, and you need to censor yourself, which in turn means that you will limit the amount of ideas you will generate to the ones that anyone around the world can have, and you will willingly not access everyone else's creative elements. And those are the ones in divergent thinking that will allow you to really make far away and weird connections, but sometimes that will lead to fantastic results.
Yeah. Have you got any specific activities that you do for that enable those things you're talking about?
There is this exercise that I first heard from Barry Kudrowitz himself, which he calls it tigers and bears, where you pair up with someone else and you simply start listing as many reasons as you possibly can for which bears are awesome or tigers are awesome. And it doesn't need to make sense. If you say tigers are awesome because they jump on rainbows, for the purpose of the game, it's fine. And then you have 1 minute for the bear, 1 minute for the tiger. You decide who is who in the couple. And then the winner is the one that managed to list more reasons. And what happens then is that you see this in action. So the first few options will be, well, it's they got nice fur, big claws, big teeth, nice eyes, live in the woods, live in the jungle, blah, 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 stuff that we all know. But at some point you run out of ideas and you've got this pressure, but no stress because it's a game, we don't care. So you come up with funny and silly stuff that makes you laugh. So again, back to humor connected to creativity. And people start laughing and people start coming up with these ideas. And in the end, you go through the concept being like, well, if you do this, if you manage to purely play around, discuss, enjoy, or give each other permission to be silly about it, well, that's where you can get a very, very interesting soil for ideas to generate.
Yeah, it was cool. I experienced that, and I remember the normal thing is like what you said, and then you get to a point where you need new ideas and you think, I don't want to say the silly things, but then you've got a goal and then you say the first one, and there's this internal permission. And I can see that, if you're looking for actual business problem solving ideas, unless you do this kind of activity, they're not going to put out and be divergent thinkers. And I love that. And it also built that it kind of leveled your participants, right? So if you think about, sometimes you have executives and other people like team members, whoever, all sorts of levels in the room. And you can find that people won't speak up because the exec is the leader. What they say is going to end up as the solution. But I felt like it was a great activity to really put people on the same linear hierarchy so that all opinions and expressions were valid, and it would contribute to that divergent thinking. So that was really cool. That is a good activity.
Definitely. And what you said, the presence of the boss is there. They actually call it the hippo, the highest paid person's opinion, because it's you don't want to look silly in front of your boss. But I'm willing to argue and I'm willing to defend this until the rest of my professional days. If you're not being silly when you're trying to ideate or come up with something or come up with a solution, you're doing a bad job. If you're not saying stupid shit, then you're doing a bad job. Then judging whether that's useful or not is a problem of convergent thinking. That's when you start caring. But if at this point you're not just blurting out anything, as silly as it is, you're doing a bad job. And if you hear a brainstorming room where nobody's laughing, you know that they're doing a bad job. And vice versa, if people are giggling, then there is something going on there that is amazing.
That's cool. I like it. It sounds like you are really into your research. Like,
yes.
Yeah. Okay. What is this is something that I do not do any of except in formats like this. So I'd love to know what bits of research anywhere that you've come across in any walk of life, but have made up the core kind of way that you approach the work that you do now.
John Cleese. John Cleese, yeah, he is one of my personal heroes. I have the utmost respect for like what they did with Monty Python. And I mean, if you want to look at groundbreaking comedy and silliness, that's the way to go. And you can find it around. I came across this a few years ago. It's a speech on creativity in management. You can find it somewhere. And it's incredible. The way, I mean, what he says, based on his experience as a creative person, much more than pretty much everyone has ever been, I'm willing to argue, like what his process has been, what he learned from it, how that has been transferred and later discovered via research. So research kind of caught up with it, but also how the whole thing is presented. So there is this big discussion. I think one of the groundbreaking points for me has been the point he makes about the difference between formal and being serious. A lot of times we think about we need to be serious, while in reality we think about the fact that we need to be formal. We cannot be silly. We need to be in a shirt and tie. We don't come to the office in jeans and blah, 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 blah. And the point is like, well, what's the point of it? What is the reason for that? Sure, you don't want to look shabby. Formality can have a reason for being in specific areas. But if you need to work together, to ideate, to enjoy coming up with a solution and creating something new, what's the point of all of that if not putting more stress on you? You can still be silly, you can still be funny, you can still play and at the same time you can be extremely serious about it. Take the name Lego Serious Play. That says it all.
Yeah, very cool. What other ones?
Other ones, I'm guessing, checking my thing here. Yeah, there is a book by Alda. Okay. If you don't know him, he is a Hollywood level actor. He was in latest big movie, I think, was Bridge of Spies, but he's fairly advanced with his age. Still extremely, extremely sharp. He wrote a book called If I Understood You, Would I Have This Look on My Face? Which is all about how we communicate, how we interact with each other, and how we connecting it also to research and to improv as well, and to what makes it so that we can get a point across. It's really enjoyable. It's really good. So that's another one.
And what specific things have you taken from that you're applying?
From, I guess, Alda, I always quote him on on something that he did, and which I think is a great example. He came up a few years ago. It's all about communication. This one, not creativity, but communication. Yeah. If you want to work in a group and create, you need to communicate clearly. So that's also the basic of it. He came up with this idea. Let's give let's say $10,000, $20,000 prize to anyone who can explain as clearly as possible what a flame is, what fire is. From a scientific perspective, it was called the flame challenge. So you have to explain heat dissipation, chemical transformations, what happens. So what is a flame? And the thing is that the judges of that are, part of them at least, are 10-year-old kids. So at this point, you have a challenge. You need to explain something scientifically accurate, and you need to do it well, but at the same time, make sure that little kids can understand you. And you see people coming out, like scientists coming up with any sort of ideas, making animations, singing songs about it, making dances, playing with puppets, whatever. But that also tells you one thing, even in communication, what does and also we can reconnect it also to speaking on stage. What does formality do? The only thing that matters is, can you get the point across? Or more importantly, can you make sure that the other person understands you? And in communication, that's the only thing that matters. In creativity, if you want to bring an element to the room, well, make sure that other people get it. And the only way you can do that is if you start, again, by listening to others, looking at what they're up to, looking at whether they're present, and then deciding how to bring your point across in that context.
Interesting.
I just went down a rabbit hole of a rant. I can get very nerdy sometimes, but still, it's a great book.
Yeah, that's cool. When you are facilitating, working with leaders in whatever format that might be, training, whatever, and at the end of the day or the event, how do you know that you've been successful for you, that you've embedded the knowledge or changed behavior?
Well, different ways. Usually, well, of course, I get a little feedback form very quickly in the end for me to, hey, very basic start, stop, continue.
Service. Yeah.
Yeah, but no, I mean, I have a few different questions, but like very basic of this. And then for me, it's not so much what they tell me at the end, but I tend to notice it during the interactions. If towards the end of the workshop, they're still smiling, engaging, and they're still engaged after 4 hours of work, and my workshops are really intense. I had to slow down the amount of content I was delivering at some point because it was just way too much. But if I see that they're still happy, engaged, and maybe they come to me with questions, even after that amount of work and that time, then I know that I've done something. And in general, if I see that throughout the workshop they have laughed, they have enjoyed the time together, and they have had a good emotional memory of what the workshop has been, then I can count that as a success. If people are laughing at the end, if people are still enjoying it, then I know that they will remember. Because emotion is what frames our memory. So if I have a good interaction with someone, and it's really uplifting, positive, makes me feel good, I will remember it better. And that's the idea. So we all remember our first kiss. Nobody remembers our first dish of pasta, despite me being Italian and pasta being a very emotional part of me. But the emotional connection that I had with that moment was so strong that it's burnt in my memory. The rest, it didn't have a strong emotional connection, so I tend to forget it. Bring it back to a workshop. If I see that people are somehow emotionally engaged, then I know that there is something there is something that they will be taking home with them.
Yeah. What are your secret tactics for creating that emotional impact?
Welcoming them with a smile. To be honest, I love, whenever I'm in a room, love to put on some music, not be strict on time, not be, hey, we have to go through all of this, but take 15 minutes to welcome people, chit chat, have a smile, maybe have a bunch of flowers on the table, which are always nice and uplifting. Have some use some melodic electronic music to, welcome people in, have a coffee, chill, relax, let's have a chat, down to earth kind of relaxed environment. And then that sets a very good vibe for the rest. And I can give you an example. this year at some point, I was doing a workshop. It was a series, and at some point, the place we were at didn't have the room ready, so we had to scramble and find something else at the very last moment. And because of that, there was no time or no reason, because the whole vibe was messed up because of the irritation in everyone, to kind of set up a good vibe. The behavior of the place that was hosting us kind of brought it down for everyone. So we still went through with the workshop, we still did something, but everyone could notice that the vibe was really different. So that makes it's still an emotion, but it's a terrible one. And connecting to the content, I don't think they would have enjoyed it. They had enjoyed it as much as they would have in a different setup. It's all connected.
Interesting. Okay, I want to let you.
I see that. I see the little hamsters in your brain just running on the wheel.
Yes, they are very fast.
Yes, cool.
Burn and rubber. I want to allow the space for you to get nerdy again.
All right.
What should people know about the brain that they might not know, but it will help them be better in the L&D space?
I'm not an expert on the brain. I like to study the brain per se. I would say look into it, study it, and there is a bunch of different. Just read up, and I'm not anyone to share like what people should know, or I don't think I'm the right person to say that. What I will though say is that the more you get into serious research, which is not sexy. I mean, you should see the database at this point that I have of academic papers and numbers and things. And it's like, God damn it, why do I do that? Why do I do this to myself? But once you get into taking the news directly from the source, or if you get a book that is based on proper scientific and referenced and accepted research, you can see the difference with the amount of crap that is being presented as truth. So there is a lot of, I'm guessing because everyone luckily that I work with in the L&D space is extremely competent. So it's not, I exclude them from this example, just want to make sure of that. But outside of it, I noticed that there is so much misunderstandings, misconceptions, and ignorance because people haven't taken the time to study. So if you're serious about this, and if you're still talking to me right now and still listening, you probably are, start reading, take books, take anything that inspires you, and just take the time to study, read. And if you're interested about the brain, there is plenty of books that will give you a lot. And specifically also if you're interested like in, like I was interested in humor and connection to how your brain works and the connection to creativity. There is plenty of stuff on there, scientific, but also relevant. And I mean, don't take it from me, take it from someone who's done the work and went down the rabbit hole properly. So follow up on those steps and incorporate that in your training as you see fit. But just don't base yourself on blogs or whatever people just say, or you can if they reference it.
Yeah, well, that's a really good point, because how would people know that this is a valid source of information?
Usually so for example, I have an emotional intelligence test, emotional intelligence book out, and online, even if it's the test, if you look at it, it's 50 questions, but at the end, I reference every single point, and every point I made with a couple of exceptions, everything is a scientific paper. Everything has been published on an academic journal. So you usually, apart from a few of them that publish for money, they're called predatory. Most of them, in order to, if you have a paper and you want to get it published on a journal, most of them read the paper, review it, challenge it, make sure that is properly researched. And I'm guessing you can never have the certainty, but you have a very much much higher chance of that source being reputable and you being able to trust what's written in there. So my take is, if someone quotes videos or YouTube or Wikipedia, take it with a pinch of salt. If someone quotes boring and dull academic papers, that might be worth it.
Okay. I know where I will be. Not joking.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it is a good a point around the referencing, because otherwise if they don't, maybe they're just not doing the nice thing and actually referencing someone else's work, but it is just an opinion or someone's perception or experience. Yeah. In terms of where to get those journals, like for me here, we're in Australia, like we can just go to the library website and then that links off to academic journals that you have access to. Is there any others you'd recommend for people to explore?
I usually just use Google or Google Scholar. It's a bunch of times, or ResearchGate even. There is also, I think, something not fully legal, not torrent, but a website that keeps on shutting off, so I'm not take it with a pinch of salt, that as well, but most of the time I do find what I need on Google Scholar or on ResearchGate or academia.edu. And yeah, it's not always easy to start on a new topic specifically, because you have this and you have a universe of different papers that keep on referencing each other, so it's difficult to find your way around. But it's difficult, but it's not impossible, so I will go for that.
Yeah, cool. All right, thank you. This has been a delight. It's a smorgasbord of ideas for people really to just like spark their own research journey and to think, that resonated, I want to go explore it more and apply. So thank you for taking us on this crazy ass journey.
Thank you for inviting me.
No, it's
lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure. And I just put a note for technology that allows us to connect from Berlin to all the way to Australia. I don't remember exactly where you are, but still absolutely amazing. It's lovely to meet like-minded people and share things and have discussions. So yes, thank you so much for having me.
All good. Well, thanks everyone for choosing to learn with us at Bella Vista Studios, and you can go explore and connect with Edoardo. We'll put his LinkedIn in the description of the video. Take action on something that's resonated from this video and apply it to your life and be a better practitioner. Peace out. What's up, awesome human? Thank you on behalf of myself and the Bella Vista Studios team for continuously choosing to learn with us. We really appreciate it. If the tips and the insights and the context resonate with you and you want to take your skills to the next level, or you want to make your life way easier, you will love our Creator Hub. The Creator Hub is a place for people like you and us. Basically, it's the stuff that we use internally at Bella Vista Studios, and then we just share it publicly with you. The Creator Hub is created by instructional designers for instructional designers, and what you'll love there at the moment is we've got a quiz, Could I Be a Better Instructional Designer?, that has so much tips in the feedback if you're interested in human-centered design or just taking your skills to the next level in terms of the solutions you're creating and the problems you want to solve. But in there as well, aren't we cute? That's us. But we've got the coaching courses, freebies, give us gratitude, and also we've got some templates. And basically they're always around the lens of learning experience design, instructional design, and e-learning. So a human-centered design focus is very much what we're about at Bella Vista Studios. So putting your learners at the heart of a solution and creating something for their needs. So there's the human-centered design stuff, and then we've also got the business stuff. So this is the stuff they don't teach you about when you want to become a freelancer or a consultant in the instructional design world. So go check it out. The link is in the description. You can check out everything that is available for you. Thank you for choosing to learn with us. Continuously invest in your skills. You will be rewarded as an instructional designer. Share this stuff, share it with other people, because when we are better instructional designers, we create better solutions, that create better humans, that create a better world. So we have a very important role, and I'm excited to be on this journey with you. Have an awesome day.